Cape Town indeed, as the country prepares for the official memorial in the reigning Johannesburg. We are in the home of retired Judge Essa Moosa, who practiced as a human rights lawyer in the 80s. He represented Mr. Mandela, his family, and several UDF activists when they're taking part in the Free Mandela Mass campaign, but also several political activities through the country. We're visiting his home for us to give us some insight on his relationship with Mr. Mandela and how he represented him. Good morning, sir. Talk us through the period when you first started working with Mr. Mandela.
Yeah, good morning to your viewers. Perhaps I need to just go a little backward. As a student, I used to frequent the Grand Parade, the place that Mandela, in fact, made his first speech after he was, in fact, released from Victor Verster prison. And the ANC and the alliance partners used to bring in a truck, rigged by a loudspeaker, and make speeches there. And I distinctly remember as a student, one of the slogans was, freedom during our lifetime. I thought it was a pipe dream at the time. Subsequently, things, in fact, worsened for the struggle in this country. When Mandela got arrested, he was charged for treason. Eventually, he was acquitted. But he, after he was acquitted, he was, in fact, charged again for the Rivonia trial, and he was then sentenced to life imprisonment. And I think that whole slogan of freedom during my lifetime, or during our lifetime, receded further. And yet, if I think back, and on the 2nd of February 2nd of February 1900, when de Klerk made that statement, saying that he was going to release Mandela and the political prisoners, it suddenly became a reality. And I distinctly remember just before that, Mandela, in fact, invited us to Victor Verster, and in fact I've got a letter here which he sent to us dated 21st of August 1989, addressed to me. Dear Essa, many friends have rallied around us during these past 26 years and left us with a lot of courage and hope. In this regard, you and your firm have been outstanding, so much so that I sometimes wonder whether without that support we would have had the staying power for which my fellow prisoners have become so renowned. Many thanks for your flowers and birthday greetings. I only hope that it will be possible for me to see you on these premises in due course. Meantime, I send you, your family and staff, very best wishes. And if one examines this letter, he's not talking about himself. He's in fact talking about his fellow prisoners, and that's sort of the unselfishness, not trying to get recognition for his contribution to the struggle, but of his comrades imprisoned at the time. And then subsequently, we were invited to see him, Victor Verster, just before his release. I was then a member of the ANC Constitutional Committee, and he then explained to us at the time that he had talks with the officials of the government on the question of possible negotiation, and he made it quite clear that he informed them that he's not negotiating with the apartheid government, but he's talking to them about negotiations with the ANC, and he made that quite clear during our discussions there at that meeting.
Take us back briefly. During President Pipota's term, there was talk, and they looked like there was promise that Mr. Mandela could be released earlier, but that was conditional. Take us through what those conditions were for Mr. Mandela and what they would mean for him and his comrades.
I remember 1985, there was a lot of expectations at that point in time that Mandela was going to be released. I remembered Winnie Mandela coming, and we picked her up at the airport. We took her to Portsmouth prison at the time, and she came out with a letter from Nelson Mandela, and he instructed his daughter Zindi to read out the letter at the F&B Stadium in Johannesburg. And in that letter he indicated that he was offered his freedom on two conditions, and that was firstly that he renounced violence, and secondly that he be confined to some place in the Transkei. He outright rejected those conditions, and he says unless his comrades are free, he will not accept any conditions, and even not accept his freedom on those conditions that in fact were imposed. And that letter was read out by Zindi at a mass meeting that was held in Johannesburg. I remember at the time Winnie was quite mum about what the message was until the message was read out at the stadium in Johannesburg.
Talking about Mama Winnie Madikizela Mandela, a lot of the time we talk about the freedom fighter, the militant Winnie Madikizela Mandela, but she was also his wife and a mother to his children. Can you take us through the consultations you had with her, the meetings you had with her, when hopes that Tata Mandela would come home early were being dashed and weren't coming through? What was that interaction like on a human-to-human level when you had to sit down with her and make her understand that he would not be coming home immediately?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of, as I said, there were a lot of expectation that he was going to be released. Obviously, we didn't know the conditions upon which Botha offered his release, and I think everyone was quite happy that he was going to be released. And obviously, when Mandela announced the rejection of that, in fact, a lot of people were disappointed. I myself was disappointed, obviously not knowing the condition, but I think when they heard the conditions, they agreed with Mandela that he should not accept his freedom on those particular conditions.
So, thank you very much for sharing all that history with us. That's retired Judge Essa Moosa, who represented Mr. Mandela in the 80s, talking about the impact of the conditions that were placed on Mr. Mandela if he wanted to be free earlier. Let's go back to Johannesburg.